This tiny payment thing
It's a giant pain.
Hi, ladies.
Alex from US Bank. Can she help?
How about a comprehensive point-of-sale system?
that can track inventory, manage schedules.
And customize orders?
That's what US Bank Business Essentials is for.
What about a new oven? Can US Bank help us there?
We can serve loans in as fast as 12 minutes.
That would be a big help.
Huge.
Jumbo.
Ginormous.
Finding ways to make your business boom. That's what US Bank is for. We'll get there together.
Right there. Ah, that should do it.
Time to call WireNut.
Yep.
Call the experts in home repair. The WireNut Plumbing, Electric, and Air.
We're here to help small businesses play hard and win big in Colorado Springs, Olympic City, USA.
Thanks to our many partners, we are able to offer great tools.
Permit Partner is a new and easy way to navigate the permits, licenses, and fees needed to open or expand your business.
Accelerate COS is a brand new small business loan fund.
COS Open for Biz is a step-by-step roadmap for those just getting started.
Plus, our office can connect you with local, state, and federal resources.
We love all business, but small business is the backbone of our economy and makes us a more vibrant and interesting community.
We're grateful for every small business that chooses our city.
We look forward to helping you find success in Colorado Springs.
Kaiser Permanente is more than a health plan. We're an integrated healthcare system with care teams, hospitals, and health plans folded neatly into one convenient package. One of the most effective ways we can manage costs and deliver better health outcomes is by leveraging our integrated model to provide our members with the right care at the right place and at the right time. With the long-term savings we offer our customers, superior health outcomes, and convenient coordinated care, it's no wonder Kaiser Permanente is the preferred health plan for so many organizations nationwide.
Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? Can I get a, hey, Robin. Can I get a go vibes?
Go vibes.
There we go. All right, good. Well, welcome, everybody, to day 3. My name is Danny Barger. I am the Senior Vice President of Marketing, Communications, and Sales at the Colorado Springs Chamber in EDC. Woo! Thank you, Ramon. Ramon is our board chair, so I paid him to give me a woo just now. So this week has been great. Have you all been able to participate in some of the other workshops? All of them? Woohoo! All right. We've got one more tomorrow as well to close us out, so hopefully you can join us there. First, I wanted to thank our workshop sponsors. We have U.S. Bank, GE Johnson, and Colorado Enterprise Fund. How about a round of applause? Thank you. So today we're going to talk about one of the #1 issues in every industry, and that's talent and workforce. Our topic today, building a championship team, and it's all about talent attraction, retention, building those MVPs, and keeping them on your team. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator, Melissa Scruggs. She is the president of the newly formed organization, Financial Talent Group, who specializes in direct hiring placement of highly skilled accounting, finance, and administrative and executive professionals throughout Colorado. Very fitting for today's topic. So everybody, welcome Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So glad to be here. As she just mentioned, this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I hear it every day. Every organization is encountering challenges in hiring and retaining top talent in a market that we're all trying to recover and continue business after coming out of COVID. So we have a great panel here today, very resourceful, great businesses, great leaders in our community that we've all kind of sat together and put together some ideas, topics that we know would be beneficial to you all in giving you some ideas to take away from here. So I know we have a lot to cover, but not a lot of time. So with that, I'm going to pass it on and let each one of our panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with Meredith.
That wasn't on the script.
We're ad-libbing today.
Hi everyone, my name is Meredith Marshall. I am the CEO of Uncharted. We are data-driven and human-centered. So what we do is we bring a data scientist into an organization to pinpoint to the percentage what's working well and what's not working well. I also focus on mental health, and you'll be hearing a little bit about that today. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ramon Alvarez. I'm a retired corporate executive in Fortune 100 companies in North and South America. And now I'm a small business owner executing the hardest thing there could be out there. We own Minuteman Press of Colorado Springs, along with my wife, and our sons work there as well. And I'm happy to be here. We also give back to the community quite a bit, so Danny's shout out on being on the board of directors for the Chamber in EDC, as well as consulting for the SBDC and being on the BBB board. Yeah, anyway, we're here for the community for sure. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Michelle Robinette, Vice President at GE Johnson. Stepped in for Jim today. Unfortunately, he could not be here. He's very sad to have missed this event. GE Johnson, commercial contractor in town. And I've been working with them for 15 years, and building a team has been all about who we are and our culture. So glad to be here for this topic.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for Small Business Week. My name is Sean Gullickson. I'm currently the president of the O'Neill Group. We dabble a little bit in development as well as private equity, but we are an investment management company who prides ourselves on creating jobs and building community here in Colorado Springs. Many of you probably know me from my previous career where I spent 20 years here in the community as a banker. And we're excited to be here today, and it should be fun, so thank you.
Thank you to everybody. We're glad you're here. Okay, so we'll get right into it. So this question is for each of you, and we'll start with Meredith. What does a healthy culture look like to you?
Yeah, so where I like to start with this is there are broad definitions of what healthy culture looks like, and I know our panelists will get into those in a minute. But what I'd like you to think about is if we think about the United States as a whole, there are certain values that we hold as a country. Things like freedom and integrity, and those are true across the board for us. But if you look at a Seattle, Washington, and a Montgomery, Alabama, Well, those cultures feel very different, don't they? And the same is true for your organization. So while we'll talk about some broad themes that are generalizable, it's important to understand that your culture is going to be a little bit different because your company is different and the people who work in it are different.
Very, very good. You know, I'm a numbers guy, Sean. But so I look at some lagging indicators, and I also look at some leading indicators when it comes to culture. First of all, when we started our company, we had an ambition to have a certain type of culture, a culture that was open, inclusive, and focused on our customer. So we created a mission statement, and it was something we wanted to be. 3.5 years later, it's nice to have seen that our true culture evolved to align with our aspirational culture. But how did we get there? Well, to me, a healthy culture is one where the lagging indicators like turnover, like your unemployment expenses, attendance issues, all of those lagging indicators to tell me that there's something wrong with my culture because people don't want to be here. And the turnover is just too high. And so then I start looking at some leading indicators. Well, what led us to that, and how could I have noticed that our culture wasn't that healthy, empowering, open, inclusive culture that we wanted? Well, when we would have huddles, people wouldn't look at me. And sometimes it wasn't cultural in terms of their background. It was the fact that they didn't really want to be there. They weren't engaged. They weren't on time. They weren't participative. And all those leading indicators can lead to high turnover and a loss of employees. And this turnover that occurs in small business, and when I consult small businesses, small business owners, one of their largest complaints is, man, it's tough to lead a team. Man, there's so much turnover. They're not as good as I would be out there, right? So the aspirational mission that we had initially with our company was, who do we want to be? What do we want to be like? How do we want to act? And then we hire to that, and we train to that. So for me, a healthy culture is about numbers, both lagging and leading indicators, but it's also about having fun. You know, you get to work and you just like being there. I was just sharing a story about how I get up at 5 in the morning and I start reading email now. When I was in corporate America, that's the last thing I wanted to do. Now I can't wait to communicate with my team and with our clients.
My vision of a healthy culture is very similar to Ramon, right? To me, it's very important that if you have a healthy culture, people enjoy coming to work, right? And I often live that philosophy with everyone on my teams, is making sure that they are enjoying coming to work, because you spend a lot of time there, right? You need to enjoy what you're doing. And how you make joy out of that is by working with great people that respect you, that treat you fairly, that listen to you, that you feel also that you have a part of the impact to how the company is succeeding, right? For us to be successful on construction projects, it goes down to the craft laborers, the laborers on the job. They're the ones that make us successful, right? So how do we make sure they feel like they're part of the culture? And it's not just something that the top leadership mentions, right? It has to go down to every employee. They have to feel like they are a part of the team. And the only way we can be successful is by having that team. One of the things that we focus a lot on is safety culture, and make sure that we rolled out something that's called Me and My Family, because you have to make it personal, right? I want to know who I'm working with and why they want to work safe, so that it makes me feel responsible to get them home at the end of the day to their employee or their family or their dogs or their families or whoever that they feel most relationship to.
Absolutely. I think it's important to acknowledge that every company has a culture, for better or worse, correct? And as you've heard many of the panelists speak to already, a strong set of core values is where you start with building culture. And those core values are led from the top down. Your leadership needs to model those core values on a daily basis. And I think when you model those core values, you'll see those take effect throughout your organization, And your employees will start to embrace those not only internally on a daily basis, but when they're in the community or doing things in their daily lives as advocates or stewards of your organization, they're modeling those core values as well. Trust and accountability is very important in a healthy culture. A mantra that I've always used, and there's at least 4 people in here who've lived this mantra with me for several years, but it was service to clients, community, and each other. And this was something that didn't need to be enforced. And when you have a healthy culture on any given day, you can walk into your business, your company, your office, and you can see examples of your employees serving clients at a high level, serving their community with passion, and most importantly, serving each other internally, because as we've learned over the last few years, those needs are shifting on a daily basis. And as we talk more about flexibility here, you know, the importance of those values and your team embodying those and supporting each other becomes even more important, and you see that take a life of its own. And then as leadership, you know, it's our job, even in a healthy culture, that's not the end game, right? There's more work to be done. It's a continued investment in resources, understanding of what your employees need. And the more you do that, and the more you dedicate yourself to that, the more each level of your organization will then begin to embody that and invest then in their staff and employees and others as well. And so I think each of those activities is critical and is continuous. That work does not end, it does not stop, because when you stop, your culture stops to grow and evolve as well.
I think that's awesome. And yeah, I think you've all hit on that. Leadership starts at the top, right? Let's talk about, Meredith, this is for you. Why is talking about mental health in the workplace today important?
Yeah. Well, we are in the midst of a mental health crisis. That is probably not surprising to any of you in this room, but what might surprise you is depression is the leading cause of disability around the world. I'm gonna let that sink in. Depression is the leading cause of disability. I was shocked when I heard that. There's some other stats that I want to share with you to help paint the picture of what this looks like and why it's important to your work. So more than 1 in 5 adults in the US live with mental illness. Globally, an estimated 12 billion working days are lost every year to depression and anxiety at a cost of $1 trillion lost in productivity. Now there's some stats that you can look at around, you know, what we're facing globally, what we're facing as a nation, but it's also important to think about sectors that we work in. How is mental health different when it looks at the sectors, and how is mental health different given the population that works for you? So a few that I wanted to point out today is more than 90% of workers in the tech sector report having been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. 90%. And almost 30% of veterans report a diagnosis of at least one mental health disorder following their return to civilian life. Now that's an important statistic because it's 30%, and also we know that mental health is generally not something that individuals leaving the military are open to talking about. So this is reported. We can assume that that's probably higher than what we have here today. Another thing that I'm noticing and recognizing as I'm talking to leaders and training them is what I'm hearing more and more often is employees are coming up to them and expressing thoughts of suicide. Now take a moment and think to yourself, would I be able to respond to an employee or team member who came up to me with suicidal ideation? If the answer is I don't know, that's a problem. I know often we'll talk with friends and colleagues and we'll say, well, it's not like I'm saving lives, you know, I don't have to stress that much about my work, but you could be in that moment. You could be the first person that that individual is reaching out to. So it is important that you're thinking about mental health. So why am I sharing these depressing statistics with you all? Because it's the elephant in the room. So we are living through a mental health crisis. It is affecting more people than you probably recognize. And if you are not equipped as a leader to respond in an emotionally responsive way, you're hurting the foundation of your organization.
So quick follow-up to that. What do you recommend businesses do to be prepared for exactly that?
To have that conversation?
Yeah, or to be able to assess a staff member or someone that's not doing well at the office. What can an employer do? What processes can they put in place to make sure everybody's ready or prepared?
Yeah, so this can get into tricky territories, you might imagine. Talking about mental health is something that needs to come from the employee. It's not something that you can go up in as a leader and say, hey, are you depressed? So there are legal issues that you might run into there. But what's important to do first is to train your leaders. One, reducing the stigma around mental health, so we're openly talking about what it is we face day in and day out. And second, creating an environment where individuals feel comfortable coming to you and sharing what's going on in your life. I don't know about all of you, but I've had bosses in my life that I'm very transparent with and open with because they've created that safe space. And I've had bosses in my life where I don't tell them a thing. So how do we train leaders so that they can be that safe space for individuals to be transparent, open, and honest? That training then needs to go down to team members to reduce the stigma and talk about it and train team members on how to recognize it. And then when it comes to the question about suicide, what is it you can do? In that moment, you're there to listen. You're there to validate, you're there to support, and get them the help that they need. So you are not a first responder. You are not the person who's going to help them work through this, but you're going to connect them with resources so they do have somebody who's well-trained in this space and can help answer their questions.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Sean, this one's for you. So is flexibility a competitive advantage to your company? And how do you guys deal with, what is your schedule around flexibility?
No, thank you. And it's funny because I'm not sure that this would be a question today if it weren't for COVID, right? I don't know how often we were talking about flexibility in the corporate environment outside of small pockets prior to COVID, but I think a couple of statistics before I get into a couple of points here and why this is going to be so important for each of our companies, and it has to deal with the workforce, right? Paso County, our unemployment rate is 2.8%. Which means we have 0.44 workers for every job in Colorado Springs, which means a very, very competitive workforce for each of us. And I think anybody who's been hiring in the last couple of years has been feeling some of the pain of that and asking themselves questions. How do I set myself apart from my competitors so that I can attract and retain some of the best talent? And by and large, the term flexibility comes up in that conversation. And that term flexibility can mean a lot of things. And I think for your organization, you need to work together and collaborate to define that. And it starts with a healthy culture. Flexibility without controls, without structure, without intentional policy can actually be detrimental to your organization as well. And we felt that coming out of COVID because we were forced to be reactive. We had to react to the needs of our employees. We had to react to the needs of our communities. And we did not have the time to be proactive in setting structure and expectations around what flexibility in the workforce meant. And what we experienced was, at any given moment, we could lose an employee for a day, half a day, for 10 days, for a week. And we had to adapt and accommodate that. And so naturally, people would get used to having that flexibility to care for things in their life. And I think something that a lot of leaders may overlook, and maybe not even intentionally, but we forget to put ourselves in the shoes of our employees. And at the end of the day, we're all human beings who have needs, whether that be health-wise, family needs, you name it. And I think it's important that we make those decisions understanding that it could very easily be us on the other side of this conversation. And it's important to understand how would we want to be treated. And for the leader, understanding the motivation or the return on investment that comes from being flexible and making reasonable decisions for your staff. We all have families, and I think that when you have a healthy culture and a set of core values, as we discussed earlier, and you want your employees to embody and embrace those, there's some being reasonable and flexible on the other end of that is what is going to continue to inspire them to invest in your organization and those values. And it's very simple. They're very simple decisions, and more often than not, it comes down to a family matter. It comes down to a health matter, and folks feeling safe to come to the leadership in the company to say, hey, and this happens frequently these days, my daughter's out of school for whatever reason, my husband has to work, I can work from home, is that okay? And we have to react and respond to that. And I think what we need to recognize is by giving that simple gesture and that flexibility to that employee, how much more will they give back on the other end of that decision? And my experience has been, it's been a lot. And my experience is the return on investment for making those decisions from a human standpoint has been very valuable. But I'll go back to where I think a lot of us are right now, which is we don't have the structure in place or the expectations in place of what that means for our staff and employees to make sure that it is equitable across your organization, because it's a very difficult topic from an equity standpoint, because different people in your organizations have different roles. Your maintenance worker may not be able to work from home like your accountant or some other office workers, and it's important to define what that is and to invest in each of those levels into those of your organization and those job functions equally, and meeting them where they are and what they need, because we all have a job to do, and I think most people want to be successful in their company. I think most folks and employees want their companies to be successful, but they're going to give to you as much as you're going to give to them, and I think this is something that's shifting quite quickly in our workforce. And I think as leaders of our organizations, putting that and defining that, putting that in writing, and having the conversation with your staff and communicating with them is going to be important as well, because that's where, again, the trust and accountability comes from. That then will push forward the culture that you're after as in your company, and so that they're inspired and continue to do their job and ultimately want to stay with you. I think this is one of the biggest outcomes of being flexible is retaining your employees. Right now, to me, retaining your good employees is going to be one of the most important activities and topics of discussion for most organizations, because replacing them is costing you more today than it was 3 years ago. So that flexibility matters. It is going to give you a competitive advantage, and I can tell you just from personal experience, in the last 5 months, I've lost 3 candidates that I've offered a job to because their other company came back, matched it, gave them more flexibility to work from home, give them a remote job. I mean, they're doing what they need to do to retain their employees, which is hurting the rest of us who are trying to recruit that talent as well. So be mindful of that, and these conversations in the interviews are important as well. I think having those up front when you're bringing a new employee on, understanding what their expectations of flexibility is, what core hours means to them, is absolutely essential, because now you're having that conversation right out of the gate. There's no confusion, and you're not going to be blindsided by needs of that individual, and you can accommodate them right up front.
Does anybody, this is a big topic, and to Sean's point, I think you've all probably done some interviewing lately, and they want a hybrid job, they want a remote job. What flexibility means to them is very, very different, and so having to explain and really dig in with that candidate on what they want so you can truly hire them is important. Who else has had some of those, and how have you dealt with them?
You know, having thousands of employees is easier than having just 7. And even with 7, we do have remote employees. And even a customer service expert who lives in Kansas, we have an iPad on the counter so that she can communicate if someone comes in, or we transfer calls. But to Sean's point, we've been very reactive in trying to give them what they've been wanting all along or what they felt they wanted, right? And so the more intentional and deliberate we can be in understanding what our team needs, then we'll be better off for it, right? Whether it's mental illness or other, we are in the people business. And all of those people skill sets that you're acquiring today, either through formal or informal means, are going to be transferable for you, no matter what industry, no matter what business. And so understanding our employees proactively and being intentional about how we cover the WIFM, right? Do y'all know what WIFM is? What's in it for me, right? I mean, it's like, it's important that we understand our employees, and so that we can, you know, be proactive and intentional about providing that, and hopefully that will avoid some of the unnecessary turnover that we have. Because when turnover occurs, and most of you have had it on your teams, boy, it sets us back, right? Everyone then starts wearing different hats. Our clients suffer. Our business stops the trajectory that we were on. And so bad things happen when we lose great people unintentionally, right? So.
I think one other thing, if I can throw in there really quick, is, you know, from our aspect, 1/3 of our employees, roughly, can work remote and still do their job, but 2/3 of our employees have to be there to physically build things, right? So we were very intentional, and it's still, we don't have the final answers of how to handle this, but making sure, Sean had mentioned equity, right? Because the folks that are having to be there physically every day kind of feel like they're being not treated fairly because the other half can work at home, and they want that flexibility. So you have to be very thoughtful, though, too, of how that flexibility impacts everyone on the team, because being flexible for one person might make another person not feel like they're being treated equally.
I'm sorry, but there's a key point there, equity. And equity to me doesn't mean that everyone gets a participation trophy and gets what they want, okay? If they prepared to be in a role that today doesn't have the flexibility, then there are choices both the company and the employee can make. But we can't give the message out there. I mean, in my tour in South America, I often was misunderstood, and it was my fault because I would say things like, hey, equity, we all want you to be empowered, and suddenly they wanted to borrow my car, you know, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, that's not what we meant. And so it's important that it's a gained reward for their effort, right? So if they want another role that has flexibility, here's what we could do for you. Here are the opportunities that you could have. Being an immigrant, I can tell you, I hate the fact that some people may think that I'm the token diversity person, right? But that's reality, right? And so equity is not socialism. Equity is not a participation trophy. Equity is an opportunity for me.
Absolutely. You made a very good point on the flexibility piece being earned. It's not an entitlement. And I do believe personally, in the way I lead my teams, is that we recognize those employees who are putting in the work and who are stepping in. And I think it's important that, to your point, not everybody gets that privilege. It is something that is earned within an organization, because when you don't set those expectations, then you will see the other side of the coin, which is folks taking advantage of that. And that presents a much different and more difficult conversation.
And I would add to that, to onboard, and this is the difficulty that a lot of businesses went through that had to hire during COVID, it was onboarding successfully, so somebody felt like they were part of a team, and it's very difficult to do that when they're sitting at home. So what a lot of organizations are trying to do is say, you can earn that flexibility piece, but we want to train you well, we want to give you the tools, but we want to make sure that you are feeling part of a team before we alter anything. And it just helps for retention. And then people know what they're doing as well. So I think explaining it that way too is good. Okay, we'll go on to our next one. It's on diversity. Ramon, this is for you. And it's a two-part question. Two-part question.
Why did he get that question?
So why is diversity in the workplace more important than ever before? And the second half, what benefits can organizations derive from cultivating a diverse and inclusive workforce?
Yeah, regardless of political or faith or biases that we all bring, because all of us bring them, let's just focus on business performance, okay? Because we can make this conversation really long otherwise. Tonight, the Denver Nuggets are going to play the Miami Heat, right? Imagine our team, the Denver Nuggets, having everyone be the same size. Doesn't matter which size you pick, whether it's Jamal Murray or Jokic, okay? They're all the same size going up against an opponent who's diverse, right? Now picture that. Oh yeah, well that wouldn't make any sense, right? So then why would it make sense for a business to have everyone who thinks the same way, whose background is the same biases, the same skill sets, the same competencies? If you use the analogy of sports teams and championship, it wouldn't make sense for everyone to have the same skill sets and to be the same. In business, I have found that to be true. Now, let me back up just a little. If we look at the diversity in the world, and we look at the blended ethnicities we have globally, it would make sense that our businesses would also transition how our board of directors looks, how our C-level looks, how our leaders look, how our team looks. And not just looks. What backgrounds and competencies do they have? What skill sets do they have that mirror the need of our community, that mirror our future employees who look in to see, is there anyone in there who may have my background and may understand me or not? Is there a potential? So from a talent acquisition and retention standpoint, lots of reasons, but let's not allow ourselves to be so numbers driven that we say, okay, well, the ethnicity or the diversity globally is this, the US has that, Colorado has this, and Colorado Springs has over here, right? So I'm going to have those percentages represent my team. Don't do that. Don't manage for the numbers, okay? Be aware of the makeup of your teams, and I ensure that they're representative of my future employees, my future leaders, as well as the community in which we serve. But do it for the right reasons and don't settle because someone has the background you're looking for. I know, not often will you find a minority individual saying, hey, don't settle for just a number. They have to earn it too, right? They have to be the best candidate. But to be the best candidate, female, different ethnicity, whatever, there's got to be a lot of development and identification of talent early on. So why diversity? Because it makes sense for a company. That's why. And Harvard and many consultants indicate that diverse teams have a higher level of performance than non-diverse teams. So the numbers indicate that. But let's put that aside for a minute because we can fight numbers all the time. We can find another study that says, no, that's not true, right? So let's not go there, but let's connect the dots to sports. And not everybody can be the same or should be the same, right? So the benefits for me of creating a diverse team are not just that. The benefits of having a diverse team is getting the most out of everyone. Everyone brings in their own strengths. Everyone can complement each other so long as there's a common purpose. So when I think about diversity, I don't think about how different people look and how their cultures are different and how they don't look at me and make eye contact. I think about the richness that I can have when I problem solve. I think about the richness that I can have when potential employees look inside my company. I think about the richness that I can have when it comes to engagement and being, I'll tell you, just being a good person. We hire for character, we hire attitude, and we think we're getting that, and sometimes we don't get it. And so Sean said something earlier, though, that struck with me and reminded me of why many programs have failed in corporate America. And that is because we tell them what to do, but we don't emulate, we don't walk the talk. And we don't hold people accountable when they don't walk the talk. And people see that, right? So if a middle manager's out there not living the culture through the values that the company has, and we don't do anything about it, it's going to come back into turnover. People are going to leave possibly as a result of that. So listen, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to diversity. For me, I don't believe in participation trophies. My sons all got participation trophies, and look where they are now. I was like, no, I'm just kidding. I'm working hard at that. But it's important that we don't just treat DEI as a number and do it for the number. It's important that we have the right mix of leaders and team that represents our community and future employees and allows us to win. Let's not forget about that. Sometimes we forget about the fact that the end in mind that we have is to win. What that looks like for every one of us could be different. That's okay. And I'm not saying I want to put all printers out of business. No, I need them. It's a big market. What I'm saying is we have goals, we have a purpose, and when we reach that, then we can win. And to Sean's point again, there is no finish line in the people business. So, if you made your quarter, if you made your year, if you made your, that's one thing you can count on, look back and say, oh man, we made goal, we made projection. When it comes to people, there's no finish line.
I'll be real quick, and because this topic is very near and dear to me as well, and the diversity. And I'm going to make a statement, and somebody in the audience, you can tell me if I'm crazy. It would be impossible today in Colorado Springs for every company to say we have a diverse workforce. Give it a year. There is not a way possible for every company in this community to have a diverse workforce. Does anybody want to tell me why? We don't have a very diverse community. The pool of the workforce and the talent that we're hiring and pulling for, it does not support every company in this community to have diversity as one of their goals. So I say that in this. I challenge you as business owners, as community leaders, to look upstream in our community and where are you investing your resources to provide the outcome of a stronger, more diverse workforce pool for us to hire from. Look at workforce initiatives happening across the community, whether it's in your K-12 systems, in our southeast, in our city administration, or other areas, and there are ample opportunities for us to plug in as community leaders to support these initiatives through monetary resources, your time, all of those things. It takes effort to create a pool, a talented pool, and to pull workforce from that will provide diversity for each and every organization in this company, because Ramon makes some very valid points. A diverse workforce is a stronger company, a stronger workforce, it's smarter, you'll solve problems better, and so on. So.
Yeah, and I love that, because you know what I'm, oftentimes people reach out to me and say, hey, can you be on this board? Can you be on that board? Because I'm the guy they know. You know, I'm that minority dude that's been on other boards and has some experience. It's like, I got a guy. And so it's important that that can't be our succession plan. Do you know a guy or a gal? That can't be. We have to start upstream and develop that pool. And by the way, that's how corporate America does it, okay? At Walmart, that's how we did it. At Target, that's how we did it. At Home Depot, that's how we did it. Those are Fortune 100 companies. So initially, they may have started with numbers that they wanted to achieve, but eventually they realized, no, we don't have enough people ready. So let's get people ready so that we can choose the best person for this role, and we can all get a win-win. Some stats about Colorado Springs in terms of diversity, because Chamber and EDC just paid for a study, right? And so in the U.S., the diversity index that is put out by the U.S. labor, in the U.S. we're about the index of diversity is about 0.7, and don't quote me these numbers, Danny. I know you're looking them up. They're about 0.7, all right. Colorado's about 0.6 something. Who can tell me what the diversity index is in Colorado Springs? Which one? The index. So 0.7 in the U.S., 0.6 in Colorado. In Colorado Springs is 0.44. It's one of the lowest out. I mean, it's low. What does that mean? It means that our community is just not diverse enough yet, to Sean's point, right? I mean, or we're not counting them, or they're not in the right roles. The fact is that, I mean, and by the way, this index, I like simple, by the way, because what's simple is understood, what's understood is done, and I can't handle all the complexity. But sometimes you have to dig into that, and part of what the index measures is the chances that two people in the community at random would be of two different races. That's what that measures, by the way, right? And so our community is just simply not there. And so, but we do have great people here. We have great talent. And so we either, in corporate America, you either grow it or you buy it, right? And in Colorado Springs, we have lots of great things going on for Colorado Springs. So we have lots of people moving here. We also have lots of existing people who are going to college at UCCS, Colorado College, and all others, and then they take off. Right? So how do we retain more people here as well is one of those keys. So.
Yeah, let's talk about that. We're going to come back to another question, but we're running out of time. It's about 12:20. I think this question is important for Michelle and Ramon, and it kind of follows up to what Ramon was just saying, internships, right? How do we retain the folks that are being educated in our own community? So to both of you guys, how do you utilize internship programs to grow talent in your organizations?
Yeah, our internship program, we're super excited about it and proud, because it is how we get most of our new employees, right? Our success rate is over 75% of interns become full-time employees. So we have a very robust program where we go out to the schools, We pay our interns competitively, and we even pay for their housing so that they come here and experience the construction industry. Through that, we're looking for the diverse, how do we get more people to the area, to our industry, as well as just the best candidates, right? So our interns are treated just like full-time employees for the summer. For 12 weeks, they're here. We challenge all of our projects to give them tasks as if they're an employee so they can learn, right? Because they're not gonna learn everything in college, but this gives them the real life experience so that when they are graduate, they can get up and running, and then they will want to work for us because they have become part of our family and a part of our culture. So they also, when they start, we have a big intern welcome party where we invite a lot of the employees to come spend several hours with them. They get a week of learning about GE Johnson's culture, our history, what we're all about, so that they are becoming one of our employees, right? They're into the culture and part of the team right from day one. So it's been very successful for us, and that's been one of the keys to us being able to bring in new talent is through our internship program. It's been our most success.
It's fantastic. You know, my small company doesn't have a lot of resources to go out there and, you know, recruit on campus, et cetera. But I do want to share a story about Target. Several years ago, Target's assistant managers coming in, 97% had a college degree. 97. Why? Because it was a focus for them. But they have a lot of resources. To your point, they had people on campus, and those people were oftentimes minorities who would connect with others and keep people within that streamline. As a small business owner, my focus is in I gotta have people. I gotta have employees. And I can't do what I did yesterday to get those employees, to get that talent. So what else can I do? So I think about what's the profile, what's the skill set, who do I need on my team first? That's what I think about. I don't think about first going to Indeed or other platforms for hiring. I think about who do I need on my team, and that drives how I go out to recruit. I need graphic designers. I don't have the money to go on campus and recruit, so I got on the advisory panel for the graphic design department for PPSC and started some connections there and started creating tours through my shop for graphic designers to be. Started getting interns from that, and so 4 out of the 7 employees we have are graphic designers from PPSC. Yeah, and so it really starts though with the end in mind. Who are you looking for? Who would be the best person for this role that I need to fill to gel with my culture and my team? And then how do I go get them?
That's amazing. Anybody else use internships in their organizations?
Yeah, I mean, we pull in a lot of accounting interns within our organization, but one thing, in fact, my meeting prior to this was with Lance Bolton, the president of Pikes Peak State College, and the topic of our meeting was workforce development, and it was revolved entirely around how do we place more interns in our community in organizations that then would lead to full-time employment. And I go back to the intentionality from our business community in stepping up to the plate to receive those interns, but not only just to receive them, but to your point, treat them as if they were already on staff and they were employees, invest time in them to develop them and to grow them. And in my experience in the short time at the O'Neill Group in the last 5 months, we've transitioned 2 interns to full-time employees, and I gave them their offer letters on the day of their graduation from college. And so it's a lot of fun, and you can create a lot of excitement around it, and you create a lot of loyalty. I think something today that we don't talk enough about is how do you gain loyalty from your staff, because when there's loyalty, they're willing to ride with you through the hard times and certainly perform for you during the good times. And so reaching into our local higher education systems, starting even in the K-12 system through our workforce center, and investing those times in job shadowing that then leads through to the internships, but absolutely making sure that they're at the table, giving them opportunities to observe meetings, team meetings that they may not otherwise have been involved in, and just truly engaging them and bringing them to your organization. Because whether or not they stay with you, that experience is likely to lead to a better opportunity for them in the future with another organization. And it's our duty and responsibility to invest that in them, even if that future does not lie with our own organization. And I think that we need to take that seriously as well.
Love it. Okay, so the next one is for everybody. We'll start with you, Meredith, and it's also a two-part question. So what are the unique opportunities and challenges that arise from managing a multi-generational workforce? And the second half, how can organizations effectively leverage the diverse perspectives and skills of different generations to drive innovation and success?
So the unique opportunities is what Ramon was touching on earlier. It's diversity. It's not having, I love that we're using sports references because I'm the last person that should be using those. But it's like having the basketball team that's at the same height, right?
An orchestra.
Meh. We'll find something else. So making sure you have diverse perspectives. What's important to understand, though, about generations is there are generational differences. Now, these are generalizations, right? So they're not always true, but it is important to appreciate those. When you look at boomers, they've had stability and longevity in their career. You get to that loyalty piece, right? Where you find a job and you stick with it, and it rewards you and pays off. I'm a millennial. The environment was much different for my generation. There wasn't stability. And if you look at Gen Z, there is even less stability for them. The world is so uncertain right now. But what's incredible about Gen Z, and I was having a conversation with some millennial leaders about this, is they are resisting this trend to give everything, to kill yourself for your job. They're setting boundaries early on. And I was sitting around with a bunch of millennials, and we were all kind of complaining about it, right? Like, who do they think they are? Like, we worked hard. We were there more than 40 hours a day. We did the work, and we earned our roles, right? And then I had to pause, and I was like, wow, we have become curmudgeon-y old people real quickly, haven't we? And good for them. Good for them for doing the things that we were too afraid to do when we were their age. And knowing that that's their approach and they're not willing to sacrifice, how do we shift and adjust as employers and appreciate that they're not budging? They'll go travel South America for a year and not take your job. They don't care. So good for them.
Yeah. So so thanks for not looking at me when you're talking about boomers. You looked at Sean. I appreciate that. Yes. I was expecting you to look at me for sure. But listen, I've been one of the youngest people in the room most of my career, and now with baby boomers, now I'm the youngest baby boomer out there too. So listen, it's the WIFM. You know, what's in it for me? It's understanding our teams and our employees and understanding the environment. That leads our actions. There is no one size fits all. I'm sorry. There's no silver bullet. I'm sorry. It's hard. And we have to be in the business of people to drive great teams and create great teams. And sometimes we do have to understand the generalizations that are made out there. I mean, I talked a little bit about my two sons. They're 20 and 24, and they both got participation trophies. And I was so angry when I was looking at it. It's like, come on. It's like, no. So, but that's the way it is. And I'm like, you wait and see. And sure enough, no, I'm just... So it's important to understand our teams and our people because they all are human beings. They all, but don't generalize. Don't profile, okay? I'm a baby boomer, but I can tell you I have more balance in my life than most people do. I do. Well, how do you accomplish that? Because I want to, right? And so let's not profile people out there, but there's a richness with diversity, and that diversity includes generational differences. There's a richness and diversity that will allow us to win, to perform, but only if there is a culture in that environment and leaders within that environment that will manage that inclusion, that will bring out the best in people, that will, you know, the best leaders. Someone was telling me that Jonathan's one of these leaders, so you are, yes, Jonathan. The best leaders surround themselves with people better than them at what they do, They set clear expectations of what's expected. They provide resources, and they remove obstacles. They're not in the way, right? But so it is complicated because there's no finish line and our environments change every day. But innovation can be spurred by diversity, right? Problem solving, getting to the next level. Together as a team, we're much stronger than individually. And I had to learn that the hard way when I was 20 years old, and I thought I was it because I was managing a store and people wouldn't do what I said. And so I learned quickly that the sum of all parts is so much stronger than just me. We all have different skill sets.
So for us, in addition to all of that, is also just staying true to our values. You know, everybody has the core same values in your team, hopefully, right? That you've set up that high-performing team. Each person might approach that value a little bit differently. And so the key to that is having that conversation, creating that trusting environment where people are willing to discuss, hey, what does balance? Balance is one of our values. What does that mean, right? And it means differently for each of the generations. But creating that space to have that conversation, to communicate and to understand and hear how it applies to each person is really critical, right? So that everybody understands each other, and then you can apply how that works as your team so you can work together more efficiently, right? And you're using each person's strength based on their values and how they apply to the problems or the challenges that you're facing.
I'll be quick because I know we're running out of time. But here's my prediction. This is not backed by science, just personal experience. Gen X in the next decade will be some of your most important employees when we talk about generational differences in the workplace. They will be a bridge between your older generation and your younger generation. And to that point is, I have a trophy at home from 8th grade for going 0-8 on my football team. And it is a participation trophy, so I can relate to your millennials and your Gen Zs. But at the same time, I started with nothing and had to build up my career to what I've accomplished today, and can relate to the stability and work ethic that came from the boomer generation, and can translate that down through the workplace and the workforce, through coaching, whether that's coaching leaders and preparing them to work with the millennial or working with the boomer. There's a lot of knowledge in a diverse workplace that you can tap into generationally. And I will forever stand by my statement, over the next decade, your Gen Xers will be probably some of your strongest, most important leaders in your organization. And that's not to make, there are exceptions, that's not to say that we won't have leaders in every generation, but ultimately your ability to balance between those lines is very important. And I read a quote this week, and somebody posted it on Facebook, and it said, Gen X is the only generation that were 30 at 10 and still 30 at 50. And so, and quite honestly, when you kind of take a look, there's some reality to that. And so leverage that, don't run from it, tap into the generational strengths, balance that with the weaknesses, because each of them have both. And if you play it right and you have the right people on your team, it's a very powerful thing.
I think that's fantastic. And it does boil down to leadership. Leadership needs to hire fantastic people, better people, but understand everybody's different. What motivates them? What are they looking for? I think one of the lessons that everybody learned from themselves during COVID was life-work balance and family time are really important. So when we see people kicking back a little bit on working time, that's what they're looking for. And we need to be respectful of that, and a great leader will understand how things still get done, but we're giving them what they need. So I think that's fantastic. We have time for a couple more questions, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A to everybody to ask these guys some questions. So going back to a question for Michelle, and this is around culture. So, you know, celebrating wins, I think, really helps with employee engagement. What do you guys do at GE Johnson to celebrate wins and keep people engaged?
Yeah, so as business owners, right, our success is always moving, right? We always want to get better. We always want to achieve more. So it's really important to keep people engaged in that mental health of celebrating small wins throughout, right? So that they can be daily, weekly, just recognizing everybody's working hard every day, and we keep moving the target, right? Because we want to keep getting better. So we have to make sure we recognize all the hard work that our people are doing. So some of the things that we roll out is every Monday we have a video that's called What's Happening that goes company-wide. And different folks lead that conversation, that video each week. But what part of it is giving a shout out. So everybody can turn in some great things that are happening by individuals, by project teams, and we do a shout out company-wide to them every week on Monday. We also have monthly huddles at each office, and that is a point of getting the teams together to collaborate. We talk about personal successes, great things that are happening at work, as well as get to know the people so that we're all celebrating when somebody buys a new house or somebody's having a baby. The more we know and can connect with people, the better we keep the mental health of our employees and keep the engagement in that culture. So celebrating those, it's very easy to overlook, and it's something that we have to constantly remind our leaders that you have to celebrate the small things.
What do the rest of you guys do?
Well, I just want to say that it's very difficult for someone like me, a boomer, who's very driven to get things done and sometimes very exceptions based, right? So I can see all that's wrong very easily. It's harder to see the little wins, to see the little things. And so I've had to condition myself to be strategic into when am I going to do it and what am I going to recognize. Because what we recognize as wins is very important because that's what's going to be replicated. If you recognize the little things out there and wins, those should be the things you want to continue. And we lose credibility when we start just picking something. Oh yeah, great shoes or great socks. Hey, great socks. You got to be very careful. You want to take up that time intentionally to influence repetitive behavior on the things you want to continue.
And there's something really important to this topic too, because what we saw in our work is we were working with organizations and analyzing what was working well and what wasn't working well in COVID, is appreciation plummeted. So people got caught up, they were busy, they were trying to figure out what's next and were pivoting every single week, that they weren't saying thank you. That's all the employees, they weren't wanting big grand gestures, they were just wanting a thank you. So sometimes it truly can be that simple. And the other thing that I'd like to share with you all is to make sure you're taking time with your employees and getting to know how they like to be acknowledged, how they like to be celebrated. A quick example I like to use of this is oftentimes companies will send out birthday messages. Happy birthday, it's this person's birthday, let's celebrate them. Some people don't like their birthday, and it brings up really hard memories for them. So instead, what you could do is say, what's a date that you like to celebrate? What's significant about that date? So you're still getting your point across, which is acknowledging them, but you're doing it in a way that supports them, which is ultimately what you want, right?
Right. Yep. And I think just the last one quick comment is I think that, if you get to the end there and you've accomplished that goal, and you can still accomplish that goal without celebrating the little wins, right? But I think you may find yourself looking back asking, how did we get there? And then you fail to create something that can be replicated over and over and duplicated to ensure more success in the future. And I think each member of your team is going to have a role in that overall success. But if you're not highlighting what their specific role and their specific activity and how that contributed to the success and celebrating that, then to your point, you lose the motivation, you lose the engagement, and you start to lose loyalty because guess what? There's a company over here that's really ready to appreciate them quite a bit and probably pay them some more money. One very powerful thing too that I've seen in organizations and personally experienced are peer recognition, right? How are our peers celebrating those wins? And to Ramon's point, it's not always easy and from the leadership standpoint to know every single win that's happening within your organization, but if you create a culture around that celebrating these wins, and by the way, at O'Neill Group, celebrating the small wins is actually a written core value of our organization. I think that you're going to find that activity and that investment, while it takes a very minimal amount of time, is very rewarding in the bigger picture for your organization and helping to attract and really retain your employees and your staff.
I think that's fantastic. We're going to go back to, and this one is for Meredith, we're going to go back to diversity. We all hear the buzzword diversity, equity, inclusion everywhere, right? Everybody's talking about it. DEI, have you implemented a DEI program at your organization?
We haven't. We're very small. We're like 5 people.
So has somebody implemented a DEI program at their organization?
Well, I've certainly had to execute some of these programs, and so you can imagine, Walmart's got 2 million employees in the U.S., right? Target, I had 15,000 here in Colorado. And so there is structure, there is clarity in what's expected, and there's also messaging to make sure DEI is not just a buzzword, and that we keep changing the letters in there. It's like, I can't keep up with all this stuff, right? There was one meeting that I participated in a couple of years ago, and this elected official said in this meeting, my constituents are saying there's just too much of this DEI stuff going around, so how can we tone it down a little bit, right? Other elected officials have used the word woke, right? So it's educational, right? For businesses, it's important to be diverse, to have a diverse team. It's important for performance. As a community, it's important that we realize that all of us are different. Regardless of color, all of us are different. As a world, globally, we're all different. I did that 23andMe thing a couple years ago, and boy, I didn't know I was, deriving from all of those places. And so all of us are different, and it's important that it's not just a policy. It's not just a program. It's a way of being. It's part of our culture, part of our values, right? Because it makes sense as a human being, and because it makes sense for business.
Last year, G. Johnson participated in Construction Inclusion Week, which is the national week, just like Safety Week, of trying to just build that education, really. And what we focused on is all of those topics is teaching folks what does it mean to be inclusive. It's really not just based on race or gender or whatnot. It's about respecting everybody, understanding that everybody has a different history and a different background, right? And making sure you're feeling them or allowing them to feel like they can speak up, show what they're thinking, and sharing that so that we all can learn and be that high-performing team where we have the different backgrounds, different viewpoints, so that we don't have any blind spots. So that was really successful, and we will continue to push that through as well each year.
Sean?
Well, I haven't implemented any specific DI in an organization. I've certainly worked with them in other organizations in that initiative. And I think one thing that I would point out is it's a very dangerous path when an organization looks at DEI as a box to check. And I think in that space, you are setting people up to fail, right? Because now you're reacting, you're checking a box, you're putting people in positions that they may not be prepared to succeed in. And this goes back to our conversation before, upstream. DEI is a long game. It is work that is going to continue, and it requires some patience, it requires some resources, and it requires some intentionality. There are times when I've been coaching and developing a future employee well over a year in advance of actually hiring them, and in some cases they didn't even know that was happening. And I think that for somebody to take initiative, and quite honestly, when I say somebody, it's our community to take initiative around the work and the investment it's going to take to create a broader pool of a more diverse pool of labor that we can pull from and attract talent from. It's going to be a long road, and so it's not a box to check. And unfortunately, as you look across the country, there are organizations that are treating it that way. There are organizations in this community that are treating it that way, and a result of it has been folks who have failed because they weren't given the opportunity to succeed and put into positions under the right expectations and quite honestly, with resources behind them to set them up for success. And so there's a lot of work in DEI. It is absolutely essential. It's important to each and every organization, to our communities, and really in our country. But it's not a box that we can just check. And I think that, take a look at the work that we are doing within your organization, and is it real substantial, substantive work that is going to create long-term sustainability in a broader, more diverse workforce for all of us to hire from, and really look at what you can do to collaborate not only internally, but across the community and with other companies, maybe even your competitors, to say, what are we doing to invest in this workforce so that DEI is no longer a box to check, it's just something that lives within our organizations permanently, and it is there. So.
Yeah, well said, well said. We have time for one more quick question, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So Meredith, this is for you. And we were talking about this the other day. For employee engagement, you have a manual that you give to your staff. Talk about what that is.
Yeah, so most of us have cars. If we don't, we've been in a car, right? And you have a manual in there an operator's owner's manual to be able to help you when all those lights pop up on your dashboard and you have no idea what's going on. Like, what is that light? So what we have is an employee experience manual. And what that does is it gives you the questions and the tools for you to be able to have these conversations. I think what Sean mentioned earlier is we don't always do a good job of stepping outside of our own shoes and into the shoes of someone else. So what this manual allows you to do is sit down and have conversations like, what are your core values? How do they align with the organization's core values? Something we talked about earlier. How do you like to be acknowledged? What are those important dates for you that we can acknowledge you? This is one of the first conversations you have when you're onboarding new clients so that you as a leader know how to interact with that employee. We often don't do that. We often make assumptions and we operate from our own perspective. And we're talking about DEI efforts. This is crucial. You have to take the time to step out of your shoes and into theirs to understand what it is that's going to help them thrive, not what it is that works best for you.
I love that. Okay, with that, we will open it up to questions. Who has questions? Yes, right here.
So I own a music therapy practice, and it's a very challenging job. It can be really tough to be an emotional container all day, every day. So everything you've given is super helpful. I'm wondering if there are specific proofing factors against burnout for employees in those really challenging positions, or if it's just a matter of kind of titrating up all the tools that you've already said.
So help me understand, are you asking on like a personal level how you're avoiding burnout? Is that your question?
Like for my employees that are in a really tough role, is it just a matter of like ratcheting up everything, all the tools you've already given, and having this yeah, just wondering if for those employees that are in really tough positions, if there's any specific things that you would highlight for those employees, or if it's just a matter of kind of ratcheting up all of the tools that you've already given.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the tools that we've given are helpful and will be helpful in your practice as you've described. But to my point earlier, everyone's culture is different. And therapy is unique in that it's at a very isolating space. As a therapist, you're in the room, you're hearing people's problems, and you're taking those on emotionally. And so what I would encourage you to think about for your team is, how do I work to build in team building opportunities? How do I make sure that we're connecting? When we're coming out of rooms for a minute in between clients, how am I building connection opportunities? Because the isolation plus taking on everyone else's problems, that only adds to the burnout that the general public is facing in their day-to-day lives. So being really specific about your team and what's going to be helpful to them. I know you have a follow-up question.
I'm wondering if you have any recommendations, and this might be too niche, but I'm just wondering if you have recommendations for how to facilitate that community without facilitating a trauma bond.
So bonding, like the conversation becoming about what you're struggling with in your work.
Or maybe normalizing it, where it's like, yep, I just heard this really horrific thing. Anyways, moving on. Like, that is a reality, but without creating this like toxic environment of we're all going to continue doing this because we've normalized it, even though we go home and people are like, whoa, that's really heavy.
Yes, yes. I think it's a mix of them, right? Like one benefit that you have is you're all well equipped to be able to take that on for the other person. So checking, I think I would establish a rule within the organization, checking in before you're going and dropping, like, I just had this really traumatic experience with a client. Is it okay for me to talk to you about this? Like, are you in a space where you can talk about it? Because if they're not, you're going to go down this negative wormhole, right? But then also incorporating things that are more uplifting and positive. How can you get out of the office and do things together? Another important piece about getting out of the office is oftentimes employers will think, well, we'll have a happy hour after work, or we'll do something on the weekends. Do that during the work time as much as possible, because there are some people that don't want to spend time with coworkers out of the office, and that's okay, right? So how do you find opportunities where you're going out and doing something that's uplifting and joyful, and that's not going to be the conversation, right? It's going to be something that's exciting for you all.
If I may, you're not alone. So one of the things I had to adjust to was not having the chief whatever officer at the end of the line when I needed an answer on legal, HR, real estate, whatever. As a small business owner, I don't have those resources on my team. It is okay to surround yourself with people better than you outside of that immediate team. The resources and the answers and the support can sometimes come from experts who can help us facilitate those interactions and those scheduled activities so that we can then learn how to do that perhaps for ourselves, or maybe it's continuing. You're not alone. This community is fantastic, by the way. I don't want anyone to think that it's all about DEI. It's not. It's about winning in business. It's about having a championship team. That's the topic, right? So how do you do that? It's not just your immediate team. You have to surround yourself with resources and people who are experts at what they do, so that we can move our team forward.
And you have to recognize that each of them probably handle how do they rejuvenate themselves after that. And they're all going to be different. So how do you incorporate space and time for them to process and get re-energized?
And I would say just normalize the question, how are you? Every interaction meeting I have with an employee, I ask, how are you? And it's funny sometimes because their immediate response is, well, my schedule is pretty busy, and I'm stop them, I know, how are you? And we have that conversation, and more often than not, I'm fine, but there are times where that gives them permission to open up and share, you know what, I'm actually a little bit off today, and creating a safe space for them to share that and to be able to respond in a healthy way. But simply asking, how are you, and meaning it, and genuinely listening will go a very long way, even with those employees in tough roles who are carrying a lot of burden or their workload's heavy. Sometimes that small break just to share how they are doing is going to give them enough to push through and get over the hump and get the job done.
That's fantastic. I think some of us as leaders as well, to Ramon's point, we are the top of the food chain. So how do you get those resources around to, keep yourself uplifted and share some of those ideas and get someone's help on the outside of your organization? That's really, really important. And to everybody's point, we have an amazing community full of experts and people that want to side up with us and help us through difficult situations. What other questions do we have? Yes.
Thank you all very much. This was a wonderful panel today, and I kept having questions, but then they'd be answered by the things that you're all talking about. So I run a small nonprofit. We have 1.5 employees, and I know the benefit of having interns, but I also am committed to offering value if we have an intern. And I'm afraid if we bring one intern on, that's going to almost double our staff, right? So do you see creative ways to bring an intern into a very small company? Because I would love to bring young talent to, or new talent, I should say, to Colorado Springs to build up the nonprofit community and have people see what a wonderful job it is to work in this field.
So we have this thought process of what an intern looks like and how many hours they work and what shifts they work and what they do. And yeah, we should have a curriculum. We should have all of that planned out, but one size doesn't fit all, right? So it's okay to have someone there for 10 to 15 hours a week, and you're deliberate about, of those 15 hours, how much time are you going to spend providing development and knowledge intentionally, and how much time are they going to be doing things that are going to actually help your company as well to move forward. So all of those hours are not intended to supplement our team. They're intended to provide value to the intern as well as add a little bit of value to us because we're spending our time to teach them and develop them. But one size doesn't fit all. Of our graphic designers, 2 of them toured at different times through the shop. And at different times, they were hired on as part-time, whatever they could work. Speaking of generations, right? It's like, no, part-time for me is not 20 hours. It's like 10, okay. Or maybe on call. When I can, I will. And so you adapt to that if they're great, anyway, and they're going to be an addition to your team. And eventually, both of them have become full-time graphic designers for us. But that's not the end to that story every time. So no one size fits all out there.
For a smaller organization, sometimes there's a number of obstacles in bringing an intern. It could be budget, right? Certainly for a nonprofit. And so one thing that we are very blessed with here in Colorado Springs is our military presence. And I think we often overlook workforce development and pinpoint that on our youth and education, but we also have transitioning veterans who are very critical to our community. And there are programs out there, I believe SkillBridge and others, that actually pay these interns for you. So that's actually not an intern you're paying for, but it's an intern that will work for you for a period of time as a part of their transitioning out of the military service. And it's something that we've taken advantage of a number of times, but also we have a responsibility and duty when those folks come to us. If you identify maybe I'm not the right fit for them, in my opinion, your responsibility at that point is, well, is there a right fit for them in my network? Is there another organization that would be beneficial to this intern, more beneficial than what I can offer them, as opposed to continuing to just receive and be reactive to it? Oftentimes, I believe, you put out something out there that's good, something good's going to come back around. And investing that time to say, you know what, I may not have the work for you, but I know an organization that does, and partner and create a little bit of a network or ecosystem within your space in the nonprofit world where there's more collaboration and sharing, and potentially even an internship that could work with multiple nonprofits in your network as well.
The other thing, if I can add here, I heard you say, I want to make sure I can offer that value to the intern. So I'll share one thing first. Maybe this wasn't the path you were going down, but maybe it's not an internship to start, right? I know CU has a program where they're looking for projects that students can work on that are very specific and focused. So that could be one way of allowing someone to come in and give them that experience without committing to a full-time intern or whatever that might look like. The other thing is when you're trying to offer value, talking about that value proposition. So what is it they hope to get out of the internship? Is it they just want experience, they can put it on their resume? Or do they have a direction that they're going? And if they could really focus on this, that would be helpful to them.
That's awesome. Start with the end in mind. Why would you want someone in there? What do you want to accomplish, right? Is it for them? Is it for you? Is it a little bit of both? And the intern doesn't have to an internship, it's just a program to get some OJT, right? Get some on-the-job training and give them some value and development. But we have to think a little differently about the internships and the on-the-job training that we can provide for individuals, and it will be a mutually beneficial relationship so long as they know what they're going to get and they get it, and you know what you're going to get and you get it. Is Jonathan cutting you off? Yeah.
All right, can you hear me? Yeah, we're getting all done. Well, thank you all for your questions, and panel Meredith and Ramon and Michelle and Sean. These are experts in our community that are part of great organizations in town. So I'm sure if you had additional questions, you can grab them afterwards, and I'm happy to do that. But with that, I am going to turn it back over to Danny to close this out.
Thank you so much. How about one more round of applause for our amazing moderator and panelists? Wonderful content. I took a couple quick notes and I bucketed them in what not to do and what to do. So real quick, what not to do. Don't put people in a box. We can't assume that everyone is motivated in the same way or likes recognition in the same way. And don't ask Ramon to borrow his car. What to do. Continue working on your company culture. We know that's one of the biggest things that when it comes to retention. Took some great notes there. I especially can relate to the flexibility piece. It's not earned. It is earned. It is not an entitlement. So I thought that was great. We need to connect with each other as humans. We are so busy in the rat race of life and working that I love the how are you piece. No, really, how are you? And then finally, celebrate the small things. I heard that multiple times throughout, so I love that. So again, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our lovely venue, The Vibes. Go Vibes. I bet Toasty's running around here somewhere. We hope to see you tomorrow at our closing ceremony. It's our final event of Small Business Week. It's tomorrow, Thursday at 4:30 p.m. at the United States Olympic and Paralympic Museum. So information is on the website, and we hope to see you all there to celebrate our award winners and nominees and finalists and really everybody. One more chance to just celebrate small business. And let's see, in closing, I just wanted to say, make sure you grab a swag bag on your way out. And as an added bonus, please take a box lunch with you as well. With that, we are adjourned.